To welcome Christopher Engman, the CEO of Vendemore. They're from Stockholm, Sweden, and a longtime veteran of the account-based marketing world. And specifically today, I wanted to speak with you about the launch webinar that we had in December. And I was really fascinated by the attention to detail that you had around the idea of cross-selling and upselling clients. I was wondering if you could speak more about that, but in particular, help us understand what does ABM supply that would help marketers today and maybe things that they previously were unable to do.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, we've been running account-based marketing for almost 9 years. You called me a veteran. That's almost true. And we've predominantly worked with the biggest companies in the world. And what we have learned in this period is that account-based marketing has the best ROI applied on both ongoing sales processes with new accounts. And the second one, and maybe even bigger part, is how can we grow the cross-selling index or the penetration of products and services into our best existing accounts. And why is this effective? Well, first of all, salespeople tend not to be so good at cross-selling. They focus on too few products and they talk to too few stakeholders. Whereas if you make the cross-selling marketing-driven instead of sales-driven, what happens is that you get more and more people inside your target account to start to talk about your additional services and products, and all of a sudden, salespeople obviously they want to change their commissions. What they do is that, wow, okay, my client is now talking about products and services that we have, and I haven't even mentioned it to them. So, oops, I need to go home and I need to study and come back to this client and get the money because I obviously want the commission and I want to grow this account. But I have been staying in my comfort zone, talking to too few stakeholders and maybe focusing on too few solutions. And so that's one angle. And then what can ABM bring that hasn't been there before? So ABM, especially the advertising version of ABM, has the capacity to reach a vast number of stakeholders in an account. And what is quite common is that, let's say you, Mark, you're the key account manager of a big account, JP Morgan. You're selling a variety of software solutions. And what typically is the case is that you might be the key account manager for that account, but you're talking to maybe 15, 20 stakeholders, and typically only in one location or two, and typically also in one business unit or two. So what you need to do is to grow your network inside these accounts. So lots of companies can see the correlation. I've seen some really cool statistics from both CB and also Salesforce on the correlation between the number of interactions you have, the number of parallel interactions you have inside an account and your likelihood of closing a deal. So to grow cross-selling, you can use ABM. And the one of the key ways of doing cross-selling via IBM is that we have this capability that I think is pretty neat. We can blend content uniquely per target account. So let's say, again, you're targeting JP Morgan, but in parallel, we're targeting Bank of America and some other Morgan Stanley and what have you. First of all, we can see which accounts are showing the most interest. But secondly, and that is the most important part, we can see which account is showing an interest on what. So all of a sudden, we can see that JP Morgan is showing a great interest around maybe business intelligence and big data solutions. And they show no interest whatsoever around CRM solutions. So this gives me great insight on what solutions to promote when I speak to this account. But what it can do also, let's say one of the solutions that they're really triggering on is an HR-related solution. Then I can also see in the reporting that I should actually be targeting the HR people. I might be circling around IT and management, but now I realize, oops, I need to talk to HR. So the clients that are using us around cross-selling are getting great results. So one of the best accounts is a software company focusing on the real estate industry. And they made the only change they did was to focus on us. So they regrouped money from other things into us. Everything else kept the same. They almost doubled their EBITDA, and also they started to increase their revenue. So now they're growing faster and are almost twice as profitable. And they're on the stock market, and their stock market price has doubled since we started to work with them. I'm not. I mean, there are many things that they do right, but this is a significant change they did, and it works really, really well. And we see similar patterns with a lot of other bigger companies.
So are there traits similar to what you were just talking about? Are there traits that other organizations listening to this might say, that looks a lot like me. Maybe I really need to look at this cross-sell and upsell. What things as a marketer looking at my business should I interpret as being a great sign for needing to deploy this cross-sell and upsell that you're talking about?
Well, first of all, ABM fits when you have the 80-20 rule. So you have 20% of your existing clients representing 80% of the revenue. So that prerequisite needs to be fulfilled. But secondly, one trait that you ask for is that if you have, let's say you have eight solution areas, and then you can have a cross-selling index of between 1 and 8 on average. And a common trait for someone that should really go for cross-selling based on ABM is that, well, the average cross-selling index is 1.5. So on average, you've sold 1.5 solution area out of 8 into your best accounts. So not even your best accounts are using your full potential. You might have a handful of accounts where you've sold the complete portfolio, but you probably have 20, 30, 40, 50 accounts where there is a huge potential. If you could only, by getting the cross-selling working, you could make so much money. And also, I think another trait is that if you have salespeople where you can see that they should really be talking about these additional offerings or services, but they are not. They say to you internally, yeah, I will talk to my clients about this new offering, etc. But if you would be there in the room, you would realize they're not. They're just they don't want to. They don't want to change. So marketing could lead the way in this domain, and we've seen it working really well.
So in our research, we found that the strata of lower performing, also known as lower maturity ABM programs, did not focus on the cross-sell and upsell. What would you say to them that you haven't already that would help them make that step from not looking at the cross-sell and upsell and strictly looking at prospecting as to how this could help them develop a more mature and more profitable ABM program?
Yeah. So less mature ABM adopters, they still use, and I think this comes from the B2C and the transactional B2B world. They focus way too much on measuring marketing, the marketing performance based on signups on the website. But to be honest, for most complex selling B2B companies where actually ABM is the biggest, the big struggle is not to get a sign up on the website. And typically, very few C-level people are making these signups. You get very junior stakeholders making the signups. So what you should focus on is rather, okay, how can we help sales close the deals? So what we've seen over our 9 years in ABM is that pipeline acceleration. So the phase from actually engaging with the client for real, I mean, having the first few meetings until closing the deal. And then from the point where you've closed the deal until you're starting to grow the account, so cross-selling or upselling, those two phases are the most successful when it comes to ABM. And so I think the less mature marketeers are seeing ABM as only a new way of getting more signups, which I think is the wrong approach. Marketing needs to work with sales also to close the deals, and which means it's not marketing doing their thing, handing it over to sales, and then forgetting about it. That's not how the more mature and more sophisticated B2B companies are working. They're actually helping sales all the way. closing the first deal, helping them to do cross-selling afterwards, etc. And also, I think it's a correlation between the size of the company you're working with and the cross-selling potential. So typically companies with a longer history and a more sizable customer base have a fantastic cross-selling opportunity. So most of the biggest companies in the world, they are working more or less with every company they do want to work with, but they have not managed to become an important supplier in those accounts. So I think to some extent, the cross-selling statistics that you've seen is a bit self-fulfilling, but also it's showing that immature marketeers are focusing way too much on B2C metrics, which is sign-ups on the website. But we see a lot of companies making a shift now, focusing more and more on cash-for-cash measurements. How can you measure actually the real sales? We're doing a study right now where we measure the sales, and we do A/B testing between the accounts we're targeting compared to the accounts that we're not targeting. How much more are these salespeople selling compared to the unsupported salespeople?
Control group.
Yeah, simply an A group that we target and a B group that it becomes a control group. So, and I think that's the way to go. And then you can, of course, still measure increase in traffic, signups, and all this. But in the end, what matters is how much more do we sell per salesperson or per target account, etc., and at what cost.
Well, thank you very much, Christopher. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today, and look forward to hearing more from you and Vendemore in the future.
Thank you, Mark.